The eyes of the world are on Sudan right now with all of the fighting and casualties we're witnessing firsthand. The clashes are between the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces paramilitary group. Now, to chat about this in more detail is the host of the Foreign Desk and our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, who joins us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, the generals of the two factions which are fighting right now were allies at one point in time, worked together to overthrow the Sudanese dictator Omar al-Bashir, who was once a close ally of Iran?
Yeah, this is an interesting development. Obviously, the people being in harm's way and being the victims of all of this. But, this is what happens when grown men see a power opportunity and a political vacuum that is in Sudan. This is an interim government. The Sudanese armed forces are protecting that government. That has been the deal, basically, and then finding a way to integrate the RSF to this paramilitary group into the Sudanese army. And of course, they cannot find a way to compromise, both generals wanting to have a piece of the political future of Sudan. And of course, this is not between left and right. This is not between two different factions of Islam. This is not between, North and South. This is actually between two men who are power hungry and, of course, killing and using their armies against one another instead of finding a way to integrate, instead of finding a way to work together.
And a lot of civilians, a lot of citizens suffer as a result. Lisa, according to U.S. President Joe Biden, the U.S. military has made a daring evacuation of its embassy staff from war-torn Sudan. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, this morning we're looking at some hypocrisy coming from the Biden administration, where the State Department, of course, has evacuated its staff over the weekend, getting them out of harm's way, but has told American citizens and others who are stuck there not to go to the embassy, not to get help, but to shelter in place. Now, this morning, the State Department, being pressed, of course, by our own reporter here at the Foreign Desk as well, got the response that they believe it's too dangerous to be evacuating thousands of American citizens and have instead told them to shelter in place and stay put. Now, again, the hypocrisy being, why were the embassy personnel evacuated? Why were they taken out of harm's way? But why are these now American citizens, who are numbered to be up to 18,000, many of whom may not have been enlisted, in a list of American citizens there, so that number might be even higher. But why are they not being evacuated? Now, because of the backlash that the Biden administration has faced in the aftermath of the Afghanistan evacuation, which was completely botched with the withdrawal there, we are coming up against an election in this country. So perhaps the Biden administration will kind of try to work backwards here and try to hurry up and get this evacuation going. But as of this morning, it is difficult to make that assumption. The State Department doubling down on its decision to not evacuate citizens just yet.
As China continues its military buildup and prepares for a potential invasion of Taiwan, lawmakers have rallied together to apply U.S. cybersecurity technologies to help defend the small island state. But Lisa, how much will this really help?
Right. That's a great question, Hal. So, by providing any sort of resources to the Taiwanese, it would be seen as a provocation by the Chinese, of course. So if we're getting involved, if we're inserting ourselves into the situation to say that here we are, helping the Taiwanese, of course, China will see this as an escalation of sorts and will act accordingly. Now, we have bipartisan support on this here in the United States, where lawmakers from the Democrat and Republican parties believe that it is important to begin giving resources to Taiwan in order to have some sort of defense mechanism against China. Of course, China using a lot of cyber technology in its efforts around the world, particularly fixated on invading Taiwan here as well. The second question that we must ask is, to what extent do the United States want to get involved in the escalation between Taiwan and China, and to what extent do we have the resources to do so? Of course, the reports coming out are saying that the United States overexerted itself in the war between Russia and Ukraine and gave Ukraine an exorbitant amount of resources. And of course, that military aid, we need time to replenish and to, again, provide to Taiwan. So once we get involved, once that first domino topples, to what extent do we want to get involved, and to what extent do we have the resources to do so? Those are the two questions that remain. And this bill, of course, prompting a lot of questions regarding our involvement in this conflict.
Now, Lisa, another potential threat from Asia is North Korea. That country's foreign minister dismissed recent calls for nuclear disarmament by the Group of Seven. He claims that North Korea's status as a nuclear power is, quote, final and irreversible. That should be very concerning for us here in the West.
It's as if there are, these adamant toddlers all around the world that find that right now, with the Biden administration in the White House, they can stomp their feet and they can make any claims that they want without any consequences, because that has been the pattern here. Just take a look around the globe and you see all our adversaries finding this opportunity to thump their chest and to make these declarative statements, just like North Korea is doing now. Look, it seems like the memo is out, right? The Biden administration is looking the other way. Do what you need to do. So whether it's Iran's regime, whether it's Venezuela, whether it's Cuba, whether you have China, Russia, and the list goes on. All our adversaries, including North Korea, are finding this as a prime time to make this announcement that they are resolute in becoming a nuclear state and having the world accept its status. Under the Trump administration, of course, there was this attempt to make nice with North Korea. There were letters sent. There were pen pals that were exchanging letters. But of course, that did not reach any sort of resolution. And instead, now under the Biden administration, you have North Korea very adamant about making its power known on the global stage.
Workers in Iran's oil industry have walked off the job over inadequate wage growth in many regions across the nation. Lisa, workers have called for a 79% increase.
This is more than that, Hal. Of course, this is what appears to be on the surface a regular strike where these oil workers are asking for more money. But it is entirely connected to their revolution. It is entirely connected to this call for regime change. And I'll connect the dots for you just a bit. Of course, Iran's oil sector is what is keeping it afloat. Finding trading partners in Russia and China and India and others, they're able to have this income from its oil trade, despite sanctions from the West, despite sanctions from the United States and others, and Europe trying to kind of straddle this world between putting sanctions and not putting sanctions on Iran's regime. But I don't want to digress. Iran should be isolated right now. There should be economic consequences to their behavior, but instead they have actually increased their oil sales. So now you have these workers striking and saying, we want to put a dent in the oil industry, and that is the best way to bring the Iran regime to its knees. If the outside world is not able to put economic consequences and punishments on our regime, we will do that. So this is definitely part of the women's rights movement that we've seen. Obviously, the women at the forefront, but the men are involved too. Oil workers are involved. University students are involved. And I know a lot of the headlines pinpoint the sectors of teachers and truck drivers and others, but this is completely a nationwide movement to have regime change and to call for absolute freedom.
Work from within. We hear that quite often here. Now, there are reports coming out that the Air National Guardsman who allegedly leaked dozens of classified documents onto a Discord chat, Lisa, had been doing it twice as long as previously thought, and to more people. It included sensitive information regarding both Ukrainian and Russian casualties from the war in Ukraine.
Right. So imagine that, right? All of this vulnerable information. When we ask the question, why did this guy have access to all this information? And why did he have the clearance? Why did he have the ability to put it up? But now the third question is, for how long had he been doing this? And why didn't it not come under investigation sooner? Why wasn't this detected sooner? Think about all the vulnerabilities. Think about all the secrets. Think about all the time that our adversaries had to have access to this information without anybody finding out. And here you have it. It's a much more dangerous and targeted attack on our national security than we ever thought before. And now here we are working backwards, trying to secure our secrets, trying to secure this very delicate information so that this doesn't happen again.
Lisa, a UK Labour Party lawmaker was suspended by her party for stirring up quite a bit of controversy recently. Labour MP Diane Abbott stated in a public letter that Jewish people cannot be victims of racism. She says they may experience some prejudice, but not racism.
Interesting. It's interesting that she would take the time to kind of distinguish between those two terms, prejudice and racism. And then the question begs, how much of an anti-Semite are you if that is what's on your radar to distinguish between these terms? Hate is hate. And right now, globally, especially in the United States, Canada, and Europe, the number one targeted group for hate crimes are Jews. And when you take into consideration the percentage of the population, the ratio that they are in the world population, it's mind-blowing what a targeted attack we're facing globally against Jews. So to take the time to really, kind of diminish or kind of take away from what's going on against Jews is horrific, but the left will be the left. And of course, here you have somebody who is, using their platform to spew this kind of garbage. We have it here in the United States Congress. You have women who are elected into power, women of quote unquote color, as they call themselves, who are minorities, but they use their platform to spew anti-Israel and anti-Jewish propaganda. Look, it's a fixation of the far left, and now we're seeing it in the UK as well. But I'm glad that she was punished for it. I'm glad that it is coming under scrutiny, and I'm glad that people are talking about it, so that we can really create awareness about hatred of all kind, regardless of group, religion, race, color, anything else.
Lisa, Fox News and Tucker Carlson have parted ways. His last program, I believe, was on Friday, April 21st. Carlson's departure from the network came less than a week after it agreed to pay $787.5 million to settle a defamation lawsuit brought on by Dominion Voting Systems coverage of former President Trump's claims of voter fraud and the company's software.
Yeah, it's an interesting decision by Fox News because, of course, they had to pay this money to kind of make this lawsuit go away. Not saying that it shows any sort of guilt or innocence, but that to make this lawsuit go away, they decided to pay that money. But then you look at a talent like Tucker Carlson that brings in so much money for the network. So it's an interesting decision to punish him that way. Are they really punishing the network and their business as well? We'll have to see what their ratings are, how they're going to fill that time, prime time, of course. And we'll have to see what Tucker does in the aftermath of Fox News, what he'll be doing in terms of his audience. They'll go with him. Podcast, perhaps, another news platform. We shall see.
Yeah, YouTube channel. I mean, you get yourself a few million subscribers and you're laughing. I mean, the amount of money you can make on YouTube.
Exactly
it's
right.
Incredible these days. She's our foreign affairs expert, political reporter, and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari. Thanks so much for joining us once again from the City of Angels.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.